So today I'm going to be showing off my high heroic, high valor Hawkeye build, and I know what some of you are going to be saying right off the bat. He only has a power level of 149. If I've said it once, I've said it a bunch of times. These minor ISOs, the epic ones, suck trying to get, unless you get the guaranteed weekly one, which I've kind of found for myself. I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but I've kind of only found for myself that the epic valor one is guaranteed to be in the shop for me. Every Sunday it resets, so that's only once a week I can get a guaranteed singular epic valor ISO. So that's kind of like why I have to go with the rarest sometimes. So him being a power of 149, it is what it is. It doesn't really matter that much. I can still take on the hardest events and stuff like that, and it still gets the job done. Even with the epic valor ISO, an epic valor ISO could even be worse than this rare one, and if it is better, it's not going to be better by much. It's just going to be so I can get my power to 149. So if we're going to go over this, so the main thing that you always want to look at for high heroic, high valor type builds is you want to go for the valor and the proficiency. The valor is what's going to affect the heroic stat specifically, and then the proficiency is going to affect the critical chance, which obviously you want to crit as much as possible, because the high heroic builds are the builds that are specifically for taking down bosses and stuff like that as fast as possible. So as much damage as possible is what you want to go for. So we'll take a look at the first piece, the melee piece. So it's nothing too special here, split shot arrows inflict gamma damage. That doesn't really matter too much for this build. As you can probably already tell, the main two things that we care about on this are the valor and the proficiency stat. So like I already said before, the valor and the proficiency, you want to kind of focus on that stat as much as possible. You will obviously want to focus on some perks, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but the main part for the high damage for the heroic is the high valor and high proficiency stats. So then we're going to go over to the ranged. So the ranged piece, 22.5% chance hitting an enemy with a ranged critical, triggers an anti-gravity missile payload. Again, doesn't matter that much. The gamma damage on the cluster arrows does not matter. What matters the most on this is the high valor and high proficiency stats. The double 64, 65. This is actually pretty high. So this might be honestly one of the highest type of pieces I can get that brings up my heroic stat by a lot, because the valor is what affects it the most, obviously, but when you have a dual valor with proficiency, it's going to bring it up just a crap ton more. So the high valor and high proficiency that I have on this piece is really, really good for trying to get that heroic stat up. So now for the defensive piece, and I've said this a billion times for everybody, because the meta right now is for the damage buff, right? So and when it comes to I will say as well, this is obviously pre Spider-Man drop. I think the patch is 2.2, so obviously everything is still 150 and stuff, but I wanted to go ahead and get some builds out before that dropped so that I can refine them later on. But the meta right now, especially after they nerfed the Tachyon Surge, is the damage buff. So his piece has high valor with 15.8% chance taking damage grants a damage buff, and that's obviously because taking damage grants a damage buff is the best damage buff skill you can get in the game right now, in my opinion. It's just going to be the easiest, especially if you're doing Tachyon Rifts. You're taking constant damage the whole time, like the OLT and stuff like that too. You're literally getting the damage buff every 2 seconds with stuff like that, and it's just so easy to activate. It's just always what you want to strive for, and you can always find some good ones as long as you're making sure to check the normal gear vendors that reset hourly. They usually have good ones a good amount of time. So then the heroic piece as well. So the heroic piece honestly doesn't have anything too crazy either. So it's mainly for the valor and proficiency, as you can see. And obviously I know Hawkeye, and I mean everybody for that matter, they do have perks that can help. Like this one is obviously helpful. I have this right now to help with a future ranged build, this exotic. So the hero set gear for Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and Black Panther are the best for them right now. But because the priority mission right now, you can only do it once a week for one hero. So not like each hero yet. You can literally only do it once a week, period. Until they change the fact that you can do a priority mission every week with every hero, it's going to be hard to get a good piece of hero set gear with everybody. That's just the way it is. So obviously what we care about on this is the high valor, high proficiency as well. And then obviously over here you got the 2 valor ISOs, which obviously they only have the valor stat equipped to them. I already said, and I've said a bunch in all the other previous build videos, you want to get the minor ISO, preferably epic, with the only one skill attached to it. So it goes for any build you're trying to do, whether it's high ranged, you want just the precision on it, high might, you want, or high melee, you want the might on it. You just want the specific stat attached to the ISO. Obviously, the rare ones are a lot easier to find in the field than the epic ones are. You can only really get one guaranteed epic valor ISO at least a week. You can get a guaranteed epic from the Inhuman faction and Shield faction vendors a lot more for the other ones like might, precision, and stuff like that, but valor, I've only seen it once a week for me personally. And then obviously for the major artifact, what you're going to want to do for the most damage is you're going to want to use the Sacred Norn Stone of Lethal Will, but then switch to the Tactagon, or if you just want to have the Tactagon on normally when you're not using the major artifact buff, because the Tactagon passively boosts the heroic and melee stats in general. As you can see right now, if I were to equip the Norn Stone, it brings the heroic and the melee down. So the Tactagon just gives that passive boost. When you want to do a lot of damage, that's when you activate the actual effect for the Norn Stone and switch back to the Tactagon. So the main thing about this Hawkeye heroic build as well, honestly at first I wasn't too impressed by it, I should say, because Hawkeye's ultimate, as most of you know, who are watching this probably know, is the hunting arrow, which it just whizzes by and kills multiple enemies. So I mean, it's good for taking out large mobs, but honestly for the most damage against a boss, the best thing about this is actually going to be the fire arrow assault. So the fire configuration, this does a lot of damage, especially just like from the get-go. It does a lot of damage out the floodgates. So I'm going to show this in action against the boss, and I'm going to show just how good and how much damage this does. Hawkeye does a lot more damage than I expected with this. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this video with some footage of him in action. But if you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed this build, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content in general. And I appreciate you for watching the video.
I never